everyone. My name is Ryan Fisher, and this is the Born to be a Scout podcast. This podcast explores how impactful the scouting movement is on our future lives and on all of those around us. Join me as we talk to some amazing leaders on how scouting has led them to their successes in life. The gist of this podcast is a sit down with great leaders that have been impacted by the scouting movement and how they have learned to lead through their love of scouting, even beyond fun campouts. A shout out goes to Alex Boyer for giving me permission to use the song Born to be a Scout in my podcast and marketing. You can add to his over 1 billion views on his YouTube channel or find out more about his great service work at alexboyer.com. That's ALEXBOYE.com. Now join us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as we have great conversations with people who are just born to be a scout. Today's guest is Gary Schroeder, who happens to be one of the most fun guys you can meet. That is because alongside his countless roles in scouting, including being the chair of the National BSA Strategic Growth Initiative Committee and the chair of NYLT Leadership Academy, he has spent countless hours perfecting mushrooms and other products as the CEO of Oakshire Naturals, a biotech company with the only approved natural, organic, whole food vitamin D in 30 countries. With over 50 years of involvement with the BSA, there is no doubt that this distinguished Eagle Scout was born to be a scout. Hello, Gary. Welcome to Born to be a Scout.
Hi, Ryan. Great to see you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a good day. We're talking about scouting. That's my favorite topic.
I'm so glad that we're talking about scouting here today, as you are definitely one of my favorite adult leaders that I've even gotten to experience and be with, as I have seen you countless times at programs like MLT Leadership Academy. Now, I have to ask, have you recently gone on a hike?
Oh yeah, this morning I did 5 miles this morning.
One of
That's
my
my normal morning is 4 to 5 is my minimum every day.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Gary is every morning at any of the programs I've ever been on, he disappears for hours on end and goes on some of the wildest adventures. Now I need to check in. Backpacking has to be one of your favorite merit badges, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I made sure all the scouts in my troop, and I took plenty of them out to Philmont and other places, that they all got backpacking merit badge too, because it was just too much fun to not do it.
Of course. I mean, I don't know if I have that passion for hiking, but I do know that you've definitely sent me some really cool photos of all the hikes and adventures you've done. I think you've probably seen more of the summit than most people even know exist. That is the Summit Vector Reserve in West Virginia. I think that is really cool that you really enjoy hiking like that.
Yeah, I love to hike. You may know this, but I'll share it with your listeners. My 4 summers of college, I had the pleasure of working at Philmont, 3 of them as a ranger and training ranger, and then camp director in the backcountry. And to spend 4 summers hiking like that constantly was just that was heavenly. It was great.
I'm glad we're getting to know more about you and your scouting. Would you actually like to dive more in depth and talk about how you got involved in scouting in the first place?
Yeah, it's like like a lot of other folks. Joined a troop as I was 11 years old. I'd been in Cub Scouts, and that's back when Lion was the 4th grade program, um, and did that and had a great run with that. The little neighborhood I was in started a brand new troop when I was graduated from 5th grade, so I joined that with the little kids in the neighborhood, and had a wonderful person who didn't quite understand scouting, and unfortunately that one kind of fell apart at the end of the first year. But turns out one of our neighbors across the street was assistant scoutmasters of probably the largest troop in the area. And he said, you need to come with us. And that started my journey really for real when I was a year older. So I was kind of playing catch up a little bit during those first couple years, but I quickly got to first class in Troop 31 in State College, Pennsylvania. Still there, still a great troop, and had a fantastic experience. Became senior patrol leader when I was 15 years old, and we had 75 scouts. I actually looked up the roster a number of years ago. We had 75 scouts in at the time, so it was like a full time job being the the senior patrol leader for a troop like that. So it was a lot of fun, and loved it. Went to Philmont as a youth twice, and it was great. I think probably the biggest impact actually was maybe one that was less likely to have been predicted was, prior to me being senior patrol leader, my scoutmaster, unknown to me, had talked to my parents first, but he had asked me, when I was 15 years old to go to Shift Scout Reservation and take this program where they would teach you how to teach leadership. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Sign me up. So it was actually a 10-day camp at the time, and my best friend, scouting friend, and I went and had a great experience. Came back. I was elected senior patrol leader of the troop, and then they also asked us, my friend and I, to start first time ever the council level leadership course for youth, which today we call NYLT. So I was the founder of that program for Juniata Valley Council in central Pennsylvania. And looking back on it, it became clear very fast that being asked to attend Shift Scout Reservation, where you're taught to teach leadership, was a huge leap in my skill from doing that. And the outcome was that was absolutely an inflection point for me in my life and my development as a young person, and all things that came after. So tons of great memories, and been working hard to provide those memories to every other scout that I can now too.
I definitely agree. I know I've taken the predecessor, as you said, NYLT, and it was definitely a great opportunity for me to really learn and grow myself. And now none of my troops had 75 individuals. I think that's a number that's larger than most business organizations have in their smaller teams. So 75 youth on top of that, leading
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sounds like a really big challenge. Have you ever touched on to this challenge of leading 75 individuals that are all what, 11 to 18 in
Yeah,
your
it's like
professional
herding cats, right? Great experience, though. I mean, my gosh, it influenced my career choices because as I got into college and looking around at careers, and I'm studying biology and thinking about what I could do, and somewhere in that stretch, the entrepreneurial epiphany hit me that I really need to be an entrepreneur, that I love being a leader. I love setting the vision. I love getting people together to do it, and that's what I did. I went to graduate school, focused on what businesses I could start. I worked for another company for just a couple years, and jumped out at a very young age in my 20s and started my first company. And I've been a serial entrepreneur ever since, starting companies left and right. And it's been a fantastic journey, and it really started just like you pointed out. Once you've been the leader of a group of 75, and in that case, and had all that autonomy, it was real hard to go back to the constraints of somebody else's vision of the future. So there's a simple solution: start your own companies. And I've been thrilled to be have a great journey and a great run having done that.
So can you tell us more about these entrepreneur opportunities that you took on? Like, what is it that you do at Oakshire Naturals, for example? What other entrepreneur opportunities have you taken a part of, and how does that really relate into this scouting vision more? How can future scouts kind of lean into this entrepreneurship mindset?
Yeah, and I think that's something I always tell young folks that ask if should I be an entrepreneur, and that's what I call an inside out discovery about yourself. It's partly an intellectual exercise, but it's very much one. Do you just have that fire in your belly that you want to or need to do it? And if you do, you're going to go do it. You're just going to find a way, and that's what you should do. You should absolutely find a way to make it work. My own journey in that score, having all this leadership opportunity as in high school, and then going into college, I was in a fraternity. I was in, a variety of clubs or even just classes with groups. And whether I wanted to or not, I very quickly found myself being the president or the head of all of them. And so if you want to practice being a leader, you have to be a leader, right? You have to get out and do it, and hone your skills and do it with different groups, different environments, under different circumstances. And I just had all those opportunities, and I just took advantage of every one, and it made a big difference. by learning how to lead and trying it. And then once you jumped into the business world, it certainly is a different environment. So there's definitely a learning curve. Find mentors. You'll find that makes a big difference. But my first business I started, I had developed first one in North America, the commercial process for growing shiitake mushrooms. They'd only been grown in Asia before that. Some people done it in the lab, some done it real small scale, but nobody found a way to really do it commercially viable. And I did that, and it worked out great. We did the same with oyster mushrooms, and I was out selling shiitake mushrooms in New York City, and had a guy saying, "Hey, can you get me this?" And I said, "What is it?" He said, "Well, it's an open mushroom, and it's really beautiful, and I import it from Italy, so I use the Italian name. I call them portobellos, beautiful opens, beautiful opening." And so I grew the first portobello in North America too, and marketed under that name. I just it by pure coincidence, the research I had done in graduate school in plant pathology was all in that same general direction, and I was perfectly positioned to do that. So once I had shiitake going, had portobello going, I said, "What am I working for somebody else for?" So I jumped out and started my own company in 1985, and we started doing them. Started with shiitake, got into portobello very quickly. We licensed a national brand name for 16 years. That went very well. So if you ever ate a dole mushroom, thank you for your business, because that was all myself. And then in 2008, we were doing some experiments for ways to really create a nutritional identity for mushrooms. And we read about some work that had been done, and there'd been some talk in some academic communities about exposing mushrooms to UV light and creating vitamin D. So we did that, and I got one of the first patents in the industry around that. I since then have five more. We started with fresh. Now we have this patented process. It's approved by the FDA. It's approved in Europe, Brazil, Canada, in Asia, and that allows us to have really the only whole food natural source of vitamin D. It's organic. It's perfect for a lot of ways. So we're excited. That's just kind of the next thing. It's a little extra sideshow I do. But one of the reasons I did business myself is I wanted the flexibility, the independence, that if I wanted to spend an hour or two every day doing things that I'm passionate about, that I was interested in, I wanted the flexibility to do that. And of course, that's all scouting. It's not the only thing I do. I've started a couple nonprofits here around parks and nature preserves and some things locally, but most of it's been scouting and being my own. Running my own company with hundreds of employees, I had plenty of people to delegate things to and contract out to other companies, and that allowed me to, frankly, live the lifestyle I wanted to live, and that included doing a lot of scouting and lots of trips. I've been back to Philmont 18 times, for example, and that's because I had the ability to do so, and I took full advantage of it. So.
So now you talk very seriously about all these great opportunities you did, and it seems very methodical. You've done lots of really interesting scientific things that I can only loosely explain to you since I am definitely not a scientist myself. How did you go from being, no pun intended, the fungi running your troop to the fungi in the lab running all these things? How did you transition? How did you take your experiences and really guide yourself into these decisions?
I think the key for me was that inflection point that I described earlier. And today, and I'm sure we'll talk about what youth can do going forward, but attending at what today's version is in NYLT Leadership Academy is such a very unique, different way of viewing leadership. And by having that experience as a 15-year-old, I was still pliable, right? I was still figuring out who I was, and to conclude that I was a leader at that young age, and to be given the opportunity to create some capability for that and skill for that, just made all the difference. So when I was looking at my career through college, saying, what should I do? I was absolutely looking for something that I knew I could start my own companies in. I had a real interest in and a pretty decent aptitude in pharmaceuticals and antibiotics, which are also grown from fungi. But it would have taken like $1 billion to start a good company. And I checked my wallet and I had just enough for an ice cream cone and not much else. So I was okay, that's a little out of reach. So what else could we do? And the where I went to school, Penn State happens to have the premier mushroom research institutes in the North America, and I say, well, this is a good thing. Let's check this out. So I did some independent study, explored it, and decided to apply to graduate school. Was fortunate enough to get a research assistantship, so I had a full ride scholarship the whole way through graduate school, and that just got me on the path. Then it was kind of classic career planning at that point. Where's the best place to work? Um, I've shared this story. I know you've heard it before, but I'll share it for your listeners. When I finished graduate school, I had 11 job offers from all sorts of companies around North America, but none of them were really gonna get me on the entrepreneurial path I wanted. So I did something really bizarre. I turned them all down, turned every one of them down. And I went to work. I got some grant money and worked for about 6 months at the university on some things while I sorted that out. I attempted to start a business with no money. So that was an interesting exercise, and that did not work. So it's good to have a failure or two in there. So didn't even get, you know, to square one, let alone across any finish lines. But it also told me what I needed to do. And I took full advantage of that. And I actually wrote a letter to two companies saying, hey, I know you don't have any jobs posted, but you know me, I know you. I'd like to come work for you, and here's why. Laid out what I wanted to do, including start a business and what I thought I could bring to them. And they both created a position for me. I picked one and worked for them just a couple of years, like I mentioned earlier, and then jumped out. And it was a big win for them. They started a whole new division they didn't have, and made a lot of money for them before I jumped out and started doing it for myself. So um, I think it's you finding your path like I just described mine, and the key is focus on your vision and not focus on maybe what's in front of you, because I don't think most people would have turned down 11 really good job offers coming out of graduate school, turned them all down and said, nah, I'm not interested in that. You're not on track for my vision of what I saw myself. But as a 24-year-old, that's exactly what I did, and that made all the difference. That created the step one, if you will, on the path that I wanted to have and I had visioned for myself. So it's kind of like NYLT, and then what we talk about the Leadership Academy. You got to really understand your vision, and once you get some clarity about it, test it, experiment with it, try some things, and at a certain point, commit. And when you do that, good things happen.
So speaking of MLT and MLT Leadership Academy, what are those for our viewers that might not know, and what are these skills that you're talking that we're applying to the business world that they're able to experience at their own council or in the summertime through Leadership Academy?
So NYLT is an acronym, and I apologize for using an acronym. It stands for National Youth Leadership Training, NYLT. So it's all around the training. And when young people are in scouts in their middle school years, they get exposed to leadership, and it goes through an obvious thing. First thing you got to do is you got to lead yourself, and then you can do some small steps with one other person, and then you can do some bigger steps with another person. Then you do some small steps with more than one person, and they'll be your peers, or maybe some kids are just 1 year younger. And we would call that a patrol leader, assistant patrol leader, instructor. There's all sorts of roles that you can do in a scout troop. And by doing that, you start to have leadership experiences. They're small, but it's a good start. And they're just totally experiential. And the National Youth Leadership Training, NYLT program, is a course run by your local scout community, what we call council, and it's either a week long of summer camp or 2 long weekends, so you get close to 6 days of training in. And we introduce the same leadership models that you would get in any high-priced university class, professional class. We talk about setting your vision. We talk about the team development model. We talk about how you lead at all the various steps in that. And it really centers around how you lead yourself, as I mentioned earlier. because we, Boy Scouts of America, BSA, girls included, obviously, are all around character development and leadership development. So everything we do is built around building a strong character and using that as the foundation for learning to be leaders. And so we go through probably about 15 kind of models, if you will, that I described there, including ethical leadership, problem solving, and we introduce that. And this course is really aimed at kids that are 15 years old, 14, 15, 16 range. And then we want them to go back to their home unit and practice and put them into action. And once they've done that for a little bit, then the next step is to learn how you teach leadership. And like I described from my own personal journey, when somebody shows you something, you learn something. As you practice it, you learn more. But by far the biggest step in your leap in your learning, if you will, is when you're asked to turn around, teach that to others. And when you're turned around and asked that to teach that to others, it's a whole different perspective on it. And that almost always ends up being by far the biggest leap in your learning and understanding and embracing of a skill. In this case, it's leadership skills, which of course you can study all your life and never run out of things to learn about it. So I think that's the kind of the journey that I would wish for everybody is to, you know, be introduced to leadership, do it in some ways, get taught some models, practice those models over and over in different roles. And it's not just scouting. If you're on a sports team, apply them there. In all your classes, apply them there. If you're on the theater, if you're in the band, a lot of scouts are in band. There's lots of places you can apply them and make them work. Your church, just wherever you are, apply them and put them to work. And that's how you become a leader. That's how you become a leader. So.
I love that statement. It's trying and putting yourself out there and really becoming the leader. I think one of the best things that I've ever gotten to experience in scouting is that opportunity to lead. You don't get a lot of
Mm,
opportunities to lead, or at least you do and you don't realize that you're leading. I know I took a leadership class and this professor had to try to explain to people all of the opportunities they've taken to lead. Because when you're in that moment and you're, just a member in your basketball team, you don't really think about the fact that you're leading your whole team. Scouting is doing a really great job of putting a word to it and making youth be aware of the fact they're taking on a leadership role, which I think really helps you in the future then prove to yourself that you've been a leader before. I've been the patrol leader, I've been the senior patrol leader. I am a leader, and so I can try this new hard opportunity to lead a group, which I think is a really great opportunity that you've pointed out of doing the skill of leading.
yeah, absolutely. And as you pointed out, I think one of the keys, and it's a little different than maybe how some parents kind of nudge their kids, is once you get a skill, it's not do it once and then jump to the next thing, which you often get in the academic world, right? If you're in school and you learn one set of math problems, then you immediately go to the next set, go next set. Whereas leadership has so many facets. I often describe it as a diamond. And there's these core truths of leadership that are built into that diamond that was built over the pressure of millions of years of carbon getting squeezed into hopefully something that begins to have some clarity. And you can look at that diamond once it's cut from all the different facets, and that it looks different and it shines a light different on each one that you do. So in order to do that, when you're a youth, try all these different things so you're seeing all those facets before you necessarily jump too soon to the next thing. And by doing that, you just build your toolbox with so many skills that you can put to use in all these places in your life.
I can tell you're a very science-minded individual with that analogy, but it's definitely a great analogy to put into play. Now I'd like to lead into I've heard you talk about this and I know you're very passionate about it, but there are four main categories in scouting. We have our fitness and our citizenship, but the two that you always lean into is then our character and our leadership. Now, how can we look into the importance about this? How we are ethical leaders, how character and leadership go hand in hand into being a future leader of the world
Yeah, and s scouting, has 4 aims, 4 purposes, if you will, right? Character, leadership, fitness, and citizenship. Fitness, you can get lots of places. You can do that on your own.
Yeah.
I'm a runner. So I don't run marathons like I used to, but I still get out a lot, as you alluded earlier.
Only 5
So
miles a day.
yeah, that's like 5 miles a
I think
day.
it's more than I've done
That's
this week, I'm not gonna lie.
it's a little tune-up. It's a little tune-up every morning. Um, so you can be fitness, and citizenship is taught lots of places, although I think we do, frankly, one of the best jobs out there. But what really differentiates us, BSA, is by far we develop character to a degree that just doesn't happen in other youth organizations. Um, and that's not a knock on anybody else, just that we've been doing it a very long time. We're very, very good at it. Leadership, it's the same story. Almost every other thing that you can do as a youth, whether it's in school or out of school, there are adults that are going to tell you, here's what you're going to do. And they might say you're the leader of this thing, but then the adults tell you what to do. Well, that's not really leadership in any kind of broad fashion. So the the opportunity that Scouts gives there is so unique in that. And the other piece of that, and we don't talk about this a lot, but I've done a deep dive in the academic literature about how character is developed and how leadership is developed. And what's fascinating about that is that as you do things that build character, which we do with our scouting program, and as you engage in leadership things, both of those are, when you put them together, there's a lot of synergy. Your development of both your character and leadership skills are accelerated when you put those two together. And I could have a whole hour session on just that one topic, but it's fascinating to see and understand. And that's what we do with NYLT, and that's what we do with the Leadership Academy, is we put those together and we really accelerate it. Matter of fact, our one expression we have on our water bottles is accelerate your leadership. And that's exactly what we're doing. By marrying those two together in unique ways, that it works. And we have external third party validation of that. We have a major land grant university has partnered with us on the NYLT Leadership Academy, where if you do 1 week of our program and do a little bit of extra reading and a little extra work, you can get 1 full university credit. So here you come to week of summer camp and you get a university credit, just like as if you were doing an AP course of some sort. Which is fantastic. And that's never happened in the history of scouting. We just started that the last few years, just as the pandemic was coming. So it kind of slowed down the start, but we've got it totally ramped up now. And it's just a unique opportunity. And like I said, it creates that independent validation of having others looking at us. It's not just us being enthusiastic about our program. We actually have it tied together. And we have a second course that we've put together that can add 2 more credits. And as we get more scouts in the pipeline, we look forward to rolling that one out as well.
I think the best part about that program we're talking about, Leadership Academy, is as you lean into this idea of character, it's not just about having character, it's about growing your character. And in that program, you get constant feedback both from the peers taking the course, the youth staff that are helping lead that course, and we learn how important feedback is and how it truly is a gift. You learn how to give it the right way, how to give it in a useful way, but then also how to start using it. And I think that's one of the other awesome benefits that we learn in these training courses in scouting is how important it is to get and give feedback.
Absolutely. And I think the unique thing about the Leadership Academy, especially, even compared to anything in scouting, is our probably most important thing we do is create an environment. We've labeled it special place. We have a name for it, but it's create an environment where you can make yourself vulnerable and use that to your benefit. Because usually, if a high school youth makes themselves vulnerable, somebody will exploit that. And social media is like just dripping with that, right? It's part of the hazards of that. But we have this very caring, loving, embracing system where that what you call the feedback that you get, it only comes from other youth. like yourself, because you've been one of those that have done it. So you know exactly what it is, and you're outstanding, just like our other youth staff members are. So that just makes an environment where we can explore things that you cannot literally not do anywhere else. And I think that's why it's so powerful. And the people that do the Leadership Academy program literally embrace it for life. I did. Like I said, I took it as a 15-year-old, and here I'm still doing it, gray hair and all. Except I'm on the other side of the equation. I'm the designer, and I founded this version that we're doing right now. So it's yeah, it's very powerful, and I would certainly encourage scout leaders to think about the benefits to their troop and their scouting and their community, because they're huge when these kids come back. And then for the youth themselves, it can be your inflection point like it was my inflection point.
Now you've talked about learning and growing our leadership consistently. What is a book recommendation that you have for young leaders and maybe even some older leaders like you that are interested in growing their leadership more?
Yeah, I've got lots of books. I got you can see behind me that shelf just over my shoulder is all leadership books. Um, the one that I tend to use when I'm asked this around scouting is a book by Coos and Posner, and it's called Leadership Challenge. And we actually use their college text as the book um, for our course that gets you university credit that I described. It's had many editions. I'm not even sure what the latest edition is. But what I like about it is one of those authors, Barry Posner, he actually was a scout and took the same leadership course I did,
There you
I
go.
think within a year that I did when he was young. And it always felt so comfortable reading it. And I know why, is we all had the same leadership experience. He went into academia and has written books. I went into business and spent all my spare time with scouting, but we all stand on that same foundation, and I think that will make it a little easier to help translate our scouting language and our scouting activities into that mysterious real world we often talk about. And I think his book called Leadership Challenge is one of the ones that helps it does that. And then we chose his version he has for college students of similar name as our textbook for the university credits we do through the Leadership Academy. So
Sounds like a great book that we all need to read. I'll get my
there you
copy
go.
right now.
You have your new assignment now.
For sure. All right, that
Yeah.
leads us into our next section. Our next section is called Lead Your Adventure. And that's because that has been my biggest takeaway in scouting personally. It is one of the mottos in scouting, slightly edited to my own personal appeal. I've taken the Lead the Adventure motto from venturing and changed it to be my own life motto, which is Lead Your Adventure, specifically Lead Your Own Adventure. I know that was something I
Mhm.
struggled with when I got into scouting, as there's so many cool people out there that it starts getting scary to become your own person, especially when you're young. And I think scouting gave me the opportunity to learn how to be my own individual. And I think you've started to touch on that, especially with your experience as an entrepreneur. But how have you learned to lead your own adventure as you grew from a scout to this professional that you very clearly are here?
You know, it's absolutely about thinking what adventures you wanna have. I decided I wanted to have the business adventures from the entrepreneur perspective, and I just committed to it. So that became a whole bunch of adventures, plural, right? I had all these different things. Even each company had its own stages and ages and, chapters, and then there was multiple companies. So, that was certainly, an adventure that had its roots in scouting, as I described earlier. But it plays out in family too, and I'll give an example. I was looking for a pack to put my sons in when they got of age to be in Cub Scouts, and had a choice to join an existing pack or another group was starting a new one from scratch. And I said, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur. This new one from scratch looks pretty interesting. So I was the assistant cub master, is what I was, and then Then I became the den leader for tiger cubs because my middle son then came into tigers and did that, and then did that for my youngest son. Um, and then uh, did that. That was great. And as my oldest son was coming out, because we'd started a new pack, we now needed a new troop. And I said, I'll start it. So I chose the adventure of starting a troop from scratch. And it started with just 11 boys, and we didn't even have a place to meet because the church was not available till they finished construction and some other things. So we kind of scratched and found places to meet off and on for the first 6 months. But we did. We had great camping schedules and got out and did things and attracted some kids that moved into the community. So now it gave me a couple older boys to serve as SPLs.
I'm sure they all learned how to
And
hike.
yeah, so we did all that. So we created our own venture, and the first year I had 11 kids. I had 4 join, and then I had 17. Then the next April, I had 24 kids join. So I went from nothing to a pretty decent sized
Yeah,
troop. The third year, I had 31 boys join, and the fourth year, I had 23 join. So we quickly shot up to 80 with obviously a little bit of attrition, but not much. And at that point, it's like, okay, we're in this tiny little church basement that comfortably holds about 35 people, and we're all jammed in here. So we did a lot of games outside, no matter what the weather was. But that was an adventure that I chose. I chose that because I wanted to have a troop that had two core purposes. One was high adventure, that we were going to have a real strong high adventure group, and the other was we were going to be the experts of youth leadership development,
there you go.
and we did. So turned out our council had previously run the predecessor to NYLT, and they had stopped doing it because they didn't have good leadership. And of course, I made the mistake of criticizing it, and he may say, "Great, congratulations, you're in charge." so, so all of a sudden, I found myself as scoutmaster and starting up. Like I said, it was called junior leader training time, but we did a whole rewrite of everything, and I, of course, participated in that a few years after that point. But uh, we started up, and the kids in our troop were key to that, and they were some of the they weren't the original staff members. They were too young, but they quickly became, staff members, and it was just a huge a huge element of the experience that all the kids in our troop did, and we gave it to everybody in the council. We have a small council, and we were training over 100 kids every year. So
All right, that leads us to our next section, which is our quick fire round. So the goal is to not really think too much. Give us what your straight answer is
okay, you got it.
quickly as quick as possible. Of course, I'm not going to stop you if it's good. So right now, what's your favorite opportunity in scouting that people need to take advantage of right now?
Oh, I think it's leadership development. It's what we've been talking about. It's underutilized at the council level. Not enough youth are attending NYLT. And then they have the opportunity after that to do the leadership academy. So that's the most underutilized opportunity we have right now.
So there you go. You've heard it now. If you're not already signed up or have not already do it, look it up now. Participate.
Yep. Look up NYLT in your home council and sign up. Just do it.
What does being a scout mean to you? And then on top of that, what does being a leader mean to you in terms of that?
All right. So being a scout, here's one way I like to frame it. Scouting is not something I do. It's not an activity I participate in. Scouting is who I am. I, as a boy, embraced the scout oath and scout law and said, I am going to do my best to live up to those aspirational standards. We don't all do it. Nobody's perfect. Perfect's not of this world, but excellence will be tolerated, as I always told my scouts. So that's absolutely it. Is we have to be a scout. Leadership is the same way. I have this great exercise which I'm happy to share with people if you want. But when you get into business, there's a difference between managing a group of people and leading a group of people. And I have a list of about, I think, 35 or 40 characteristics, and you can take any one of them and turn them into a full day discussion. And I'll give you one example. Some people often talk about this, it's commonly discussed. There's a difference between doing things right and doing the right thing. One is a leader and one is a manager. Managers will do things right, but leaders will always do the right thing. And often they're the same, but sometimes they're in conflict. And when they're in conflict, you start to understand who you are. And if you're a true leader, you'll do the right thing, even though you will pay a political price for it. And I can give you tons of examples where I have paid a political price for doing the right thing, but eventually we got to the right place. And that's just the way the world works.
I love it. What is some advice that you have for young leaders and scouts that are starting their life?
You know, make your own visions. Visualize yourself who you are. One thing that comes into mind is about a lot of careers right now. I think, and you hear different statistics, but they're usually somewhere along the lines of that of all the jobs that exist today that you can do, 40% of them didn't even exist 10 years ago. And you'll see that framed different ways. But going forward, it will be the same thing. The jobs and the growth areas and where the biggest opportunity are going to be are in fields and with positions that don't even exist today. And of course, a lot of people are talking at the moment about artificial intelligence and all the doors that's going to open. It's already opening those doors. We have no idea how many new things are going to come out of that. But those of you that are youth now, that's your opportunity. And that's your opportunity to be an entrepreneur. It's your opportunity to get into growth. It's your opportunity to grow. It's your opportunity to be successful. So, use your vision to see where you think those are going, and find the growth industries and jump in. Just find a place that excites you and jump in.
I love it. Again, like lead your own adventure. I love it.
That's right. That's right.
Is there anything that you want to know from the scouting perspective? What do you want to know from scouts now that they can either comment on this podcast or that you can ask me?
Oh, I think I'm pretty comfortable with a lot of things in scouting. I think one thing that we have to um, open our lens in scouting is we're really good at developing character, and we're really good at developing leadership and leadership skills. And we've been using one method outdoors, kind of one way to do it. And there are other fun things we can do, right? If scouting is fun with a purpose, there are other fun things we can do that will also achieve our purpose. And we have to be innovative in doing that. And I would love to have the youth of this country help us lead that exercise.
I love that. So if you're a youth out there and you want to let us know what it would be that would help you have fun in order to grow your character and your
Yep,
leadership, let us know.
absolutely.
What's one of your favorite accomplishments as a volunteer?
You know, it's everything from watching 50 some kids go up and get their Eagle medal, to starting up the Leadership Academy. I think the one that's the most recent that may have the most lasting impact on the most number of people was um, I took the personal risk of jumping out in front of this idea that girls should have equal access to all our programs. It was 2014, so it's 10 years ago. Hard to believe it was that long ago. And everybody thought I was crazy. Most people told me I get thrown out of scouting for doing it, and I know some people who did because of how that had played out. But I thought there was a way to do it that would make it work, and found some other like-minded people, and we formed a team, and we got it done. So being the first to do that and pushing that, I mean, I wasn't the first one to think about it. People have been talking about it literally since Baden Powell was doing it in England before it even came to the United States. So it was never original thought. It was always there in front of us, but nobody took the personal risk and did it. And it's a seminar I give on personal risk, and that's examples I use. So I think that would top my list right now.
Again, having a vision and pushing forward with it. I love it.
Yep.
My last section that I'm asking all of our guests is how they live one of the Scout oaths or mottos in their day to day life, even as a professional. And before the podcast, you picked prepared for life. So, how do you live by our slogan of prepared for life?
I find that is just a really good guidepost in a lot of ways. Because if you're sitting there and you're in high school, you think, all right, what do I need to do to prepare myself? What does that look like? Well, I think you should be a person of character. I think if you have a choice between being a follower or a leader, most people would choose to be a leader. So you want to take full advantage of that. As you head through your college years, you want to prepare yourself for a career and being a contributing member of society. And and then once you have a family, say, and you're at that stage in life, then it's okay. How am I going to prepare my kids? How am I going to prepare them for life? And we often tell parents that a friend of mine has this great way of framing it. His name is Frank Ramirez. So, Frank, I hope you're watching this. And he reminds us that parents have the responsibility to provide for their family, which is often financial, to protect them, keep them safe, and thirdly, prepare them. And most parents are really good at the first two, but the third one sometimes kind of lacks a little bit. It's the last thing that happens. And I think what we can do by being quote prepared for life is to, as parents, to get our kids in scouting and embrace it because we do things that you cannot do in sports, you can't do any other way, and you're sure as heck not going to do with your head stuck in a smartphone. And you're not going to learn those social skills. So I think that truly prepares you. And anybody that's gonna succeed in the future is not going to have their nose in a smartphone. They're going to learn how to interact with people. They're going to prepare themselves for life by having great social skills, people skills, and that's based on character. And when you do that, you're on the first step of the journey to being a leader. So,
Well, thank you so much, Gary. I think there's no doubt about it. You were definitely born to be a scout. I appreciate you coming here and talking with us here today.
great. Thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate the chance to chat with you. And I think it's fantastic you put this podcast together. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing the rest of your interviews on this.
Thank you. This has been the Born to be a Scout podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. To catch us on all of our future episodes and posts, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Born to be a Scout podcast, or look out for future episodes on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. If you're a scout who'd like to take leadership in scouting or even in your future business career to the next level, be sure to check out NYLT Leadership Academy this summer and Leadership Heights at the 2026 National Scout Jamboree. In the meantime, be sure to lead your own adventure.